On this episode, we are thrilled to feature Gary Sue, known as the SuGary Man. Gary is a prominent artist developer and event organizer whose contributions have shaped the career of notable artists like Jon Batiste, Grace Weber, Tish, Zee Avi, Victoria Canal, and The Running Lights. Beyond artist development, Gary is known for his keen curatorial instincts, organizing events such as In Good Company, the Fine Folk Music Stories, and KINdling, which have brought communities together through art. As the founder of the Empathy Project, a global initiative aimed at fostering empathy through art, Gary continues to inspire and connect people worldwide. Please welcome Gary Sue. As we mentioned, you've been spending so much of your career developing artists, nurturing talent. One of your roster, like Jon Batiste, has become one of the most popular stars. How did you get into artist development? How did you decide, hey, you know what? I want to find and help nurture the careers of artists?
So this would be as close to an origin story as it could be. So I came to New York City wanting to work with art. I didn't know what it was, but there was only two choices. I came from Poughkeepsie, which is 2 hours north. So it was either going to be LA or it was going to be New York. And obviously it was going to be New York. Got here, got a nice job, which gave a steady paycheck, which distracted me for many years because it was nice to have a steady paycheck. But I wanted to see what was going on in the scene, and there was a opportunity that was presented so that I could kind of explore it. And one of the things that I happened to explore was jazz. Because I was told the New York jazz scene is prominent, has a history. You've got to see it at least and understand the landscape. And I just so happened to take a date out to the Blue Note to see Cassandra Wilson in concert, who was an amazing vocalist. But the most incredible thing was neither the date that I took nor Cassandra Wilson. It was a young man playing piano, and it was his gig outside of his Juilliard studies during the summer. And to this day, I'm telling you straight, I've not had another more profound musical experience other than movie night. It was a moment that for me solidified why I wanted to get into music in general. He was speaking to me through his piano, and I didn't even pay tickets to go see the man. When the conclusion of the set happened, he was just there eating his meal for playing the musician playing the set. Everybody rushed to go see Cassandra Wilson, and I was like, I don't care about her. I want to see him. So I went right up and I was like, hey man, I think you're the most amazing musician I've never heard of. What is your name? And he invited me to come to his shows. I went to his shows. When he realized that I wasn't crazy and I was just an enthusiastic Asian man in the front, he started inviting me to his, the all-important post-performance hang, where you actually get to meet the producers, and you get to meet his, fellow bandmates and other musicians that are just on the, hustle, the New York City music scene. He graduated Juilliard shortly thereafter, and his career started hockey sticking. And at that time, he had nobody. And he was known for just sort of doing his thing. He was known in Juilliard as the bad boy of Juilliard, in that his professors always you have to study jazz theory. He was like, yeah, no, baby, I don't need to do any of that. And he would con himself into pottery class. They literally found him in pottery class trying to make a vase or something like that. And he would go and he would just nail the final exam as if it was nothing at all, much to the chagrin of his teachers. Anyway, he did realize at some point there wasn't going to be enough bandwidth to just charm his way out of everything, because you sign contracts and you have deliverables. You kind of just got to do them. You can't just be like, yeah, no, we'll do it another day. So he was feeling stressed for the first time in a way that he had never felt stress. And I was like, this is my chance. So I was like, I will give you an offer you can't refuse. I am going to work for you and I'm going to manage you. He's like, do you have any experience? I was like, absolutely none. He's like, why would I work with you respectfully? And I was like, well, the thing is, you have nobody. I'm pretty sure I'm better than nobody. And the off chance I'm not better than nobody, you could just let me go. And you don't really have to even pay me. I believe in you. I believe in the ride that this is going to be, the adventure it's going to be. And let's just get into it. This is my one chance to break into the industry. And he was like, do you want to start tomorrow? And that became 3.5 years representing the artist that would become now known as Grammy Award-winning artist Jon Batiste. And through that entire process, it was, people have the sense of a je ne sais quoi about people, and he was magnetic. I mean, well before he was ever the profile that he was now, people were tripping over themselves to meet him. I remember very distinctly Bill Clinton tripping over himself to meet him. He was just so excited about talking about jazz. He's like, let's talk about all this there. He literally stumbled into the room because he was so excited to meet this young, promising man. And that was always, wherever you go, that was the vibe. So anyway, that's how I got into the world.
That's awesome. And I'm just curious, what are you looking for when you're choosing to work with artists? Like, what are some of the characteristics, traits that excite you?
I look for one trait, and I stand by it. The thing is, nobody knows where any of the talent is ultimately going to go. You have to go with your gut. You have to go with what you believe is going to lead to something incredible. You just don't know what these paths will lead to. So like, nobody has it all figured out. Even if they say they have it all figured out, they don't. There's a whole bunch of preparation that goes into having an artist of competence that's skilled and trained and all these type of things, but you still need some kind of luck to actually get there. And I know this because there is documented evidence of this with Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones saying, we were ready for this type of stuff, but at the end of the day, Rolling Stones wouldn't be there without some luck. They were just prepared for that moment to meet it when it came, but it could have not come. So I just say, for anybody that's looking into any kind of representation, if the artist speaks to you, that's the only thing that matters, because for a while, that's going to be the only currency that's going to feed you and the artist. And you go with that, and that is your true north. It will be your only true north for a long time.
And that's really interesting. It's so fascinating because it's so great to hear that from the manager side, and I'm really glad we have Mike here tonight as well to hear what it's like from the artist's side. So much of your journey, Mike, graduating from music school at Berkeley, and then you went on to be a performing musician, touring with big acts such as Melanie Martinez, Mark Sibelia. At some point you decided, hey, I want to take the leap from performing and touring with these other artists to being my own artist. You recruited your brother and your childhood friend, and then you built a team around you. How did you find your Gary, if you will? How did you come across the first set of people who would believe in what you were doing? And it could be a manager, or it could just be a label person, or whoever, where along the journey from taking the leap, if you will, at what point did you get to this place where you found someone who found you?
Well, let's see. I think the most important thing for me was like realizing, like, in terms of striking out on my own as like my own artist rather than somebody's guitar player or keyboard player or whatever. It was kind of a realization of like, you've always been that guy. You've always been an artist in your own right. I mean, I'd been writing songs from 10 or 11 years old all the way up through that experience, and it was always kind of the goal was to get out, to the microphone. Those precious 8 to 10 steps to the center mic. You know what I mean? The beauty in working with those other artists was seeing it from a perspective of somebody who, just had to show up and play. I remember a real deciding factor for me, you could label this as like the fire under my ass as it goes, was I was working with this major label artist, and we were playing a festival. It was Austin City Limits. And we're back there about to go on. We're on, about to go on stage, and let's see. It was Grace, actually. You probably were involved in this somehow through the grapevine, but Grace asked me to come to LA to play, and she ended up hiring somebody else to play guitar because I couldn't make the gig because I was with Melanie over in Austin City Limits. So our A&R at the time asked me, I was on the phone, he was like, what's going on? I was like, well, I got this other gig in LA I don't want to miss, but, obviously I'm here. He's like, what's the gig? And long story short, the guitar player who was filling in for me with Grace had played for John Mayer. And he was like kind of a big shot at the time in the world of guitarists, side guy guitarists. And I was telling this A&R about this particular guy. I said, well, he's trying to branch out on his own. He doesn't do a lot of sideman gigs, but luckily they were able to call him in to fill in for me, And he said, well, I already know he's not a star. I said, well, why the hell is that? And he said, well, no star would ever play for anybody else. And I was like, this is what I'm up against, because I'm a fucking star. And I'm here playing for somebody else, And at least that's internally, I had like a little crisis. I was like, well, if this is what they look at, guys like me as, or girls like me or anybody like me who plays for somebody else is in the employ of another artist. What am I, not as good? I don't have the goods in the same way. So that was like, for me, that was like a real turning point. I remember that conversation specifically. And from there, I had been doing gigs with Grace quite a bit. And that's where I met Gary, actually. Gary represented another incredible artist called Grace Weber for a period of time, who's a lovely human being, and she's absolutely killing it now. And I consider most of my musical education, honestly, from those years playing with Grace. That was awesome. 8
years.
Yeah, man. But I met Gary, and Gary seemed to have his thumb on the pulse of the New York City scene. Everything that was creative, everything that was creative that was going on at the time, Gary seemed to somehow know about or invite people to. And as we became friendlier, he started like hitting me up for this and that. And then I started realizing that he was the one throwing the events. And I was like, where the hell, how do you know so many people? And over time, I got up enough courage to kind of, I like lightly pushed my my CD across the table. It wasn't a CD; it was probably a Dropbox link. But and said, "Hey, man, check my stuff out. I got this." Then I didn't know if he would be of the same mindset as like, well, if you play for somebody else, that means you can't do it for real. And luckily, he wasn't.
I gotta say, I'm always listening. I don't care who it is. If you send me something, I will do my best to listen. And I try to listen very honestly with the pure intent of my own spirit as to how it goes. All right? The thing is, he's a fantastic writer. And he has an amazing voice. You'll hear it soon. It just cuts through everything. And I was like, that's uncommon, and I enjoyed it because like the concepts that he brings together, he brings complex ideas into simple form, and he's able to do it in a memorable way that leaves an indelible impression. So I was like, that is uncommon. That's the type of stuff that really I revere in artists like Taylor Swift and stuff. They do very simple. They do complex ideas, but they can distill it into very simple ways that are completely unforgettable, both melodically and lyrically. So I was like, this could be something. Let's look into this further. So anyway.
Thanks for saying all that, Gary. Appreciate you, man. So we started working together. He said, yeah, I'll invite some people to a show you're doing. And I'll circle that back as part of the question was like, how'd I get involved in it with my sibling and my childhood best friend who has a name. His name's Steve. I guess we just wrote it up in the bio that way. I don't,
Childhood friend Steve.
I mean, I should just call him my brother at this point because he basically is. That's how far back we go.
Stepbrother Steve.
Stepbrother Steve. But yeah, working with a sibling is it can be a challenge. It can also be a huge asset. My brother Nick is a talented keyboard player and mix engineer. And if you're familiar,
Grammy nominated mix engineer.
Thank you, Gary. Ever the manager.
If you guys need a hype man,
Yeah, seriously, this guy. But having a mix engineer in the band, if you're familiar with the terms, right? A producer and a mix engineer are not the same thing necessarily. They can be, one person could do both jobs. But a mix engineer, if I'm the producer and songwriter of our band, Nick is the guy who takes, I build a building, and he's the guy in the thing going up and down, washing the windows, making it gleam, making it like literally stand out on the horizon that you can't miss it when you walk by it. That's a mix engineer in terms of what they do for a song. To have some of them come very expensive.
that's also a good job for a little brother. Little brother, you're washing the windows today.
Damn right.
I'm gonna build a building. You gotta wash the windows.
So it's a real benefit to have in the band. That being said, it's a challenge because we're brothers, right? And I don't know if you got siblings at all or you work with a sibling, but man, we can get into it. The cool thing about that is we don't hold anything back. There's no tactics or trying to work around, like mind fuckery where you're like, I need you to do this, but I'm going to ask you to do it in a way where I can manipulate you into doing it. There's none of that bullshit in our little crew here. I can tell him what I feel needs to happen, and he can tell me to go fuck myself. So I like to think we get to the bottom of it pretty quickly, and the what the right move often is with regard to a mix. And he's also like as a songwriter, he's the first person who hears everything I write. If it doesn't get through him, it's coming back to me. Once I get it through him, then it really starts to, I can show it to other people. And as far as childhood best friend goes, Steve.
Childhood Steve. Stepbrother Steve.
Stepbrother Steve. Steve is the he's kind of like the secret sauce to the project.
Secret sauce Steve.
I wish he was here. Secret sauce Steve.
That t-shirt's being made tomorrow.
Something about working with a sibling, right? You need a third party there to kind of cut the tension or side up. You know what I'm saying?
Side up Steve.
Side up Steve.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. All right, enough of that.
This is the meme for the evening. And everything, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, we love Steve, and I'm grateful to him for going on this journey because, he's not my blood sibling, but he's certainly given me all he's got, as much as he possibly can. And we've been a band now for, it's got to be 7 or 8 years now. And that's a long time to do a thing together, focused in that way.
So cool.
So cool, Steve.
So cool, Steve. I was literally going there. Oh, man. This is awesome. Do you guys remember when you guys first met, the two of you? Like, how did y'all meet? How did this collaboration come about?
Yeah, it was through Grace Weber. Grace Weber, who herself is a Grammy-winning, accredited artist herself, who did a lot of work on Chance the Rapper's coloring book. And that was a beautiful moment. Had worked with Mike. They held each other in very high regard. The music community is big, but it's small. So, you start getting to know the players and who actually can do things and who can't. Mike definitely is somebody that can, and Grace is not an idiot. So Grace is gonna find the best people to surround herself with. And actually, it's funny. Not funny, it's real. Everybody that she's worked with as her people in her band have all gone on to do fantastic things. Every one of them. Not one is slacking in any way. Anyway, remarkable. So that's how we met. I got to know Mike, and then Mike just kind of approached me and just said, "Hey, I've got this thing. Will you listen to it?" I was like, "Of course I will." And then when I realized that there was some kind of promise here, it's like, "Can we make something of this?" And I hit up my boy Julian Alexander Toth. If you don't know him, he's with IDAB Music. He manages the career of he's a mega producer, Will Larson. And if you don't know him, that's fine, because you've definitely grooved to his songs a million times over. He's the main producer for Nico and Vince, Am I Wrong, Kygo's Stay, Florida Georgia Line Holy, Alan Walker's Dark Side. I mean, the dude's credits just go to the moon. And I was like, "Hey man, I think I have something here. Let's see if we can kind of explore it." And lo and behold, they actually granted a label deal for them to produce music. And it was a beautiful kind of like period in which we were creating a lot of great music that got a lot of attention and great looks from folks. So it was great.
Yeah. And again, that's completely thanks to Gary. I mean, he threw a Hail Mary out there to these guys, and untested, unproven artist. And they were like, "Yeah, if you can get to LA, we'll do a session."
By the way, that doesn't happen anymore. If you know anything about music, that does not happen anymore. The romance has been gone for a long time. So I was actually telling Mike, I was like, if there's any kind of romance to be had, embrace that. Because these days, it's all about data and social media numbers and all these type of things. And they have a team of analysts that look at that to even decide whether you're going to be viable or not. And maybe then, only then, if you prove that, then maybe they'll take a chance on you. The labels love nothing more. I hope there are no huge label people. I don't mean to offend you. However, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. So they want to do as little work as possible to get you over the finish line and bring you into the fold in which they claim a tremendous amount of your intellectual credit and property. It's the way the business has flourished for a very, very long time. And while they have the capability of reach, they really are very, very much honed in on the data. And that's not sexy, but it is a music business. So they will hone in on the business part of it. I come from a different era where I believe in a little romance. I like the fact that music affects you and you fight for it. There's something there that is worth preserving. I don't care what anybody says. So like this thing has to, at least as long as I'm breathing and I'm doing the work that I'm doing, I have to get there and assert that. Otherwise, it will all come down to zeros and ones. And what a tragedy that is for music ultimately at the end of the day. I can only lead by the way I want to believe and how I can think it can happen.
Amen.
Here.
Okay. So switching gears for a second, I want to talk about the Empathy Project. That's the crux of your collaboration. That's why the both of you are here tonight. For those who aren't familiar, how did you start the Empathy Project? What is the Empathy Project? Where do you want to go with the Empathy Project?
So the Empathy Project is a result of my years of working with artists and seeing what capability art has to move people. Remember, Johnny just told you that I managed Jon Batiste, and when you manage Jon Batiste, you're literally walking through the streets, parading, second line style, going into the subways, fleeing cops. These kind of things are your day-to-day thing. And but it's amazing because people join you and they actually see and they feel, and you can actually get to break down their walls, the emotions there. They're grateful that there's that connection that they never had. And then on top of that, they connect with each other. So if anything, I got my education as a front row seat, witnessing the power of art to make a difference. Now, fast forward, we're in the pandemic. That's quite a fast forward, but it's true. And at that time, I don't think it's hard to see, and I think I'd probably get a universal agreement. Nobody was talking to each other anymore. Everybody's talking at and over each other. And so I was like, well, nobody's doing much. I need a pandemic project. I've been hearing about these pandemic projects. So I felt inspired. I was like, maybe the one thing that I will do is I will create a very basic idea. I will design a t-shirt that says, empathy on it. The look and feel of it at that time, it was a neutral color, lowercase, because empathy doesn't insist anything. It only acts to inspire and ask permission. So that was the vibe. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll do that. I'll donate a portion of the proceeds to get out the vote efforts, because we had a madman in office. We all know who that is. And I was like, you know what? That's going to be my thing, and it'll be my pandemic project. I didn't think much of it. I made 300 shirts. I was like, I know enough people. I'll sell it out eventually. Did not expect that I would sell out all 300 in 1 week. I had hit the nail on the head, I guess. It was the right message at the right time. And people were like, we should print more. And I was like, well, maybe not. Hold on just a moment, because if it has gone the way that it's gone, maybe I have a little bit of accidental lightning in a bottle. So let me honor that moment, and let me think about how I might be able to expand upon the idea. And I came upon a very serious thought. It's that if I ask everybody in this room randomly, I was like, hey, do you believe that there should be more empathy in the world? Every one of you would likely say yes. Where it gets a little sticky is what to be empathetic about. And so I was like, well, what if we could get everybody on the same page that they believe in empathy and wear it? It's unavoidable. If it's on your chest, you believe it. And let's get it so that it becomes a safer community for people to talk about it. And in that moment, and however that journey goes across the hopefully millions that would wear this shirt, maybe a subsection of that really has that deep discussion would be able to carry this idea forward, would be able to progress in their own lives about having the discussions that matter, about what you care about and what they care about, and maybe we can coalesce and find some kind of commiseration and understanding. So that was the idea. I was like, how do you get this to reflect that way? I was like, well, what if we had 7 artists with 7 very, very distinct styles, one for each letter of the word empathy, and what if we had them create what empathy believes through their artistic style, and then have it tied to a cause that they believe in? Because then we're not limiting your choice, your freedom of expression or choice. We just want you to buy into empathy. And then the beauty of it is that you will have that conversation, maybe. And if enough of you have that conversation, well, then that's the movement. So as it turns out, it ends up being a movement built on 1 million first steps. We want you to begin the journey, but however you go is up to you. But we hope that it will move society forward, because right now, more than half the things that we're experiencing in this world is the result of people not talking to each other anymore. Everybody's just digging into their sides. So if the effort is to just at least make an attempt to try to move this needle forward for society, I think we need it. I think it's a reminder. And that's kind of the genesis of that. To bring it full circle as to why this gentleman's here, Mike, who I have been working with as part of Movie Night, had this song that he wrote about 2 years ago. And it was a song that existed in a bit of a sketch. It wasn't like, fully formed. He just had sent a rough to it. And I love the message in its simplicity, its sing-songy, melodic quality to it, and it was memorable. I could remember it after weeks of having not heard it. So I was like, that's beautiful, and the message is beautiful. At the time, I told Mike, please release it. Mike, being the artist that he is, was like, well, I'm not sure. We got a lot of other
being the pain in the ass that I am.
Yeah, well, it's true, but hey, we tried to convince him, but he was like, there are other releases. We should just focus on that. This empathy movement started getting launched. I was like, well, it would be nice if we had an anthem to it. And I remembered that song. And I was like, Mike, we have a fundraiser coming up. I know you haven't seen the song and haven't sang the song in forever, but would you perform it? I'm not going to have much time to prepare, but that's actually the point. I want it to be raw. I want it to be unfiltered. And miraculously, Mike agreed. And so when he sang it, the crowd really responded to a way that even Mike felt the palpable energy. It just again felt like the right message at the right time. And this song called Something is talking about personal agency, believing that you are capable of actually enacting change, not succumbing to the pressures and the challenges that are in the world. It's a very positive message, but it's a very simple thing. It carries with it a lot of personal wisdoms that I'm sure circulate around in your families and your communities. And I just said, this would be great. I said, wouldn't it be better though if we actually got Mike to feature with an artist that's didactically different stylistically? And so I reached out to my homegirl Tish out in LA. Tish Hyman, if you do not know who she is, go look her up, because that woman is amazing. She has the vocal tenor of a Lauryn Hill and the MC qualities of the best that there is out there. She survived the 5 Fingers of Death on Sway in the Morning, one of the few women to ever have done that. And I said, what better way than to pair these two voices, these two stylistically different folks together and make that happen? And surprisingly, because, Tish is very, very developed and very successful now, she actually agreed. She liked the idea of it. And she's like, we'll work it out. And within a couple weeks, she had sent over a demo. And it was just beautiful to hear the two styles coalesce, being so different, but mixing. And I was really glad that Mike was open to it, because anytime you're asking an artist to change a few things, you have to be sensitive around that. So I was very grateful that you were actually open to it, and it worked out really wonderful. So that's kind of how it all came about.
It's beautiful.